What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Netman Podcast. Plugging along here, episode 12 tonight. We've got Ohio angler Kyle Weisenburger, a very respected guy, over 300,000 career earnings in the MLF side. He's also done well in some Bassmaster Opens, and I'm pretty sure he's still striving to, make it to the Elite Series eventually. Good dude, got some cool sponsors to do with hunting and everything. So excited to interview him tonight and see what he's all about. I don't know Kyle real personally, just always just heard great things about him. So what's up with you, Aaron? You been doing any fishing or anything, man?
Yeah, I mean, we just got back from New York last weekend, and it was terrible. It was just cold and rainy and windy, and
Not happening.
no, we got out for about 2 hours on the kayak and
Gotcha.
just to make sure they float, and that was really about it.
Gotcha.
But what about you?
It's starting to happen here. Been out a couple times locally. Went up to Buckeye Lake a couple days ago and reeled in a few bass. So it's fish are pushing up to the banks and they're starting to eat. So
Yeah, I'm starting to see some of the lily pads popping, so that
oh
gets me
yeah,
excited.
there's some veg starting to grow these warm days. So
Yeah.
anyhow, you ready to bring Kyle in?
Yeah, let's get him on here.
All right, let's do it. Kyle.
Hey, how are we doing today?
How are you, buddy? I'm Jesse. This is Aaron.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I'd say nice to meet you, but I fished as a co-angler with you about, I don't know, 2012 maybe. So
Really?
I don't
Where did we
expect
fish together at?
honestly, I don't even remember. Maybe Mosquito on the weekend
Okay.
series. But
Yeah.
yeah, Jesse
Well, it's
told me
good to see you again.
yeah, Jesse said we were gonna have you on here, and I was like, I might have his contact in my phone. Let me see. And sure enough, there it was. It said Kyle Weisenburger, Nitro Boat. That's how I was
That's awesome.
find you at the ramp.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Many years ago.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
that's
you
what.
weren't quite as gray back then.
That's what fishing will do to you.
Yeah,
Right.
I think we could all say that. Hey, Kyle, I just wanted to thank you before we kind of get started. Me and Aaron own the Great Lakes Fishing Expo together, so if I didn't really get to talk to you much about this, but we kind of started this to kind of stay in the loop, and it's not like all about Blue Rock or all about anything. We really just interviewing guys like you and good dudes, try to help each other out however we can. So that's kind of all it is. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
nothing.
we love talking fishing, and I mean, what better way to do it than get other guys on here that love talking fishing, and hopefully our listeners can learn something, and we can all just grow.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it on Easter. I know it was kind of short notice, but we had a couple other options for tonight, but I saw the opportunity there when you messaged me the other day, and I figured I'd just ask because you'd been a great one for us. So thanks again, man.
Well, I appreciate the invite, and yeah, it worked out. I got home and got to spend time with family today. We just got back, so I got the evening free, so it worked out perfect.
Cool. Well, let's talk a little fishing for about an hour, and we'll get on with our day.
Okay.
So, I mean, just looking a little bit at your career, you do all the weekend stuff. You do the opens, you do some of the Toyota stuff. So I guess just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and where you started and kind of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so it's been a long road. I back in the day, growing up, I always liked to fish, but I was always actually into golf. So golf was my true passion up until I got through college and kind of played the mini tours for a few years. And when that kind of come to an end, I lost my competitive sport that I was in, and that's when I kind of turned to fishing. So it was probably 2006 or 7, so almost 20 years ago. I had a kid, back in the day we were kids, asked me to go fish a little Tuesday nighter at Indian Lake at the Atchison's household. And I said, yeah, let's go. And had that night, and I just never turned back from that day. I just had a couple spinning rods I brought along, and just kind of fell in with the love with the competitiveness of fishing. So did team tournaments for a few years through the early, 2006 to probably like 2008, and then started getting to the local BFLs. I got my first boat. I bought an old Javelin and started BFLs like in 2000, and I think it was like 9. So each year just luckily had success locally, mostly the Buckeye BFLs. Fished those for 4 or 5 years, had the confidence to jump up to the Toyota Series. Did those for a few years, and then I got the opportunity to fish the it was the FLW Tour back in the day, and I think 2016. So that's when I kind of jumped on a little bit of the national scene, and did that through the FLW Tour years. Transitioned into when it moved over to Major League Fishing and the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals, and fished those kind of up through last year actually, and then kind of been jumping around with like the Bass Opens a little bit, and just trying to continue to improve my skills, but find out where I fit best and where I can have success.
So what did it take when to qualify for the FLW Tour? Like what was that jump for you?
Yeah, so I had a few years I fished the Toyota Series, and back then if I remember right, there was different divisions of the Toyota Series, and they kind of did, they gave some opportunities back then if you wanted to jump up to the tour based on your rank. And I think it was 2016 was the first year I said, I got a shot at getting the invitation to go do it. I'm gonna step it up and see what I can do. And looking back, it was a great opportunity, but I wish that I had known that there were so many different types of skills that I still were not great at the time, that I just had some major difficulties at certain lakes across the country that I wasn't used to. So there was a big learning curve that I really didn't think I would have, that I kind of ran into there for the first couple of years, fishing some of those deep, clear spotted bass lakes, and just lakes that we're not used to around here from Ohio.
Yeah, that's going from these little mud puddles to that for sure. I kind of checked out where you actually live geographically, so I'm assuming your home lakes would probably be Indian and Grand. Would that be kind of your, which
Yeah.
usually fits good with the, with the BFLs, obviously. But I wanted to. I wanted to jump back even a little bit further. The one year, probably 3 or so years back, I was able to jump in and fish all the Buckeye um, BFLs, which I had known your name before that, but just by doing that, like I'm still in a couple text threads with several friends I met, and you're a very respected dude, and I just wanted to ask about your dad because he seems like a legend as well on the co-angler side. He's um, I've talked to many fellas that have had their tail kicked by your dad out of the back of their boat. So, did he get
Yeah.
you into fishing growing up, or did he just start jumping in with you as a co-angler, or like did you fish at all before you got out of college?
Um, Not really. So the whole way, growing up, we were, golf and basketball. That was always my dad's thing. He was an outdoorsman. We hunted, we fished, but it wasn't anything competitive wise on that end. And when I kind of made the transition into fishing and he saw my passion for it, it was an opportunity that, he could kind of, at that point, like we were allowed to practice on the FLW Tour events, before they changed some of the rules. So there were times when we could spend a whole week together, and he could just be in the boat with me. And, so we got him into the BFLs, and he's competitive just like I am.
Yeah.
So, he's like, well, I'm going to sign up for these too. If I'm going to come along and practice for some of these BFLs, I might as well, try. And, he somehow like started to have some, really good success for a few years there. Like he won a couple events, and he found a few baits that he was just really confident in. And in the BFLs, the lakes we fish, you're always fishing behind somebody. And he found like one year he just got like real hot with a square bill crankbait, and he could just take that thing and burn it around all over behind, the boaters, and he would catch a lot of fish. And so he really had so much fun with that. And what a lot of people don't know is, so last year, he had just retired, and he was really looking forward to doing a lot of these with me. And he had some major health issues last year. So he actually, almost passed away. It was a year ago today. We were just talking about it today at Easter that, we didn't know if he was going to be around. So, ended up being, some bad things with his heart, and he's got a kind of an external pump now. So we got to be real careful with even putting him on the water, because he can't get this equipment wet.
Yeah.
So it's been a big step back for him. It's I know he misses it and he wants to get out there, but we can't rush it. We got to figure out exactly
Right.
how to get him back out there
Yeah.
but he's just got that competitive drive. So when he
I
saw that first trophy, he's like, "Well, I want a second trophy," So we started doing some team tournaments together. Like we'll go up and do the GLLS tournaments, some largemouth tournaments, and local stuff at Indian. Just have a fun time, just getting to be together. So
yeah.
we're gonna try to start adding that back in now that he's kind of healed up, and he's looking good. So I'm hoping we can get him in the boat some this year and kind of get back to fishing.
Yeah, I remember seeing on your socials there about a year ago that he had a major scare and was asking for some prayers or whatnot. So I'm glad he's on the mend. I vividly remember, like, it was actually the first BFL I had fished. I I just remembered seeing your dad. He was in a boat with the boater was kind of like the stool sitter guy, just moseying down the bank. And there's your dad in
Yeah,
the back with a square bill, just 5 casts of that guy's one, just picking he's standing up, and this guy in the front's half his age. And it reminded me a lot of my dad. And I was just like, I like that guy. And then I didn't even know that was your dad at that point, but as just through fishing
yeah,
and all, I kind of, so it was cool. And I figured you guys, you you probably have a lot of fun doing that. So I'm grateful enough
yeah.
to be able to fish with my old man a little bit still. So I just wanted to ask you, if did you guys ever get competitive with each other at all, or is it all just love?
We always did there when he had got, a few trophies under his belt. We'd always, go out that day, and then the tournament directors would kind of give us a hard time because one of us would weigh in first, and then we'd have to say like, well, do you think you beat him? And sometimes he would have a good day and beat me, even as being the co-angler, and I'd go up there with my tail between my legs because I knew that he had beat me because I had heard from some other angler on the water, "Hey, your dad, he's having a good day," or something. And when you fish the river and you hear someone's got 2 or 3 fish, and it's like, well, I've only got one, and I don't know if I'm going to get another bite the rest of the day. It's I kind of figured he probably had me. So
Oh yeah. Well, that's fun stuff.
So with the BFLs, I mean, traditionally they're in the same handful of locations every year in Ohio. Um, and so you fish the river a lot, I'd assume.
mhm.
Um, do you,
Yes.
do you feel like you're a river guy, or do you hate the river?
People ask me that all the time, and I have a love relationship with the river. Like it's not a hate thing. I've had some events that really have humbled me there, but when you look back at kind of my start and the success that I've had, because I've also fished like the Hoosier divisions, which I purposely got into those divisions so I could fish the river, other stretches of it. And multiple wins that I have are from the river. A lot of my top tens are from the river, and it's one of those things. Like I spent a lot of time at the river for that first 10 years kind of that I fished the BFLs before I started doing some of the bigger regional and national stuff. I was able to put a lot of time in on the river, and I truly felt like I was figuring some things out that I don't know, it was just like it was coming easy to me. I could kind of run something in a certain section of a pool and kind of just duplicate it. And I had a lot of success. And then it was almost like now when I go to the river, it's like I got to relearn it again. So I don't know if it's like the river's just completely changed, or I'm kind of thinking it's just because I haven't put in as much time as I had in the past on the river. But it's been a struggle for me as of the last 3, 4, 5 years, when I'm only coming down maybe for a half a day of practice or a day of practice before these events. But I will say that that mentality that I've been able to, I guess, possess from coming from these river tournaments, when I go to these other tournaments across the country where it's a tough fishery, even just like where we were at the Bass Open this week in Mississippi, it truly fished just like the Ohio River. Like I could break it down exactly like how I broke the rivers down, and it's just unique place because you'll be at the mouths of these creeks that a lot of people think, well, I can't even get in there because it's 6 inches deep. And there's certain ones you just have to, you have to have the faith, or you have to know you can run over those on plane to get into places where other people just aren't at. And it just reminded me so much of fishing the river. So that's probably why I did well last week, is just because I honestly fished it just like the river.
Yeah, just grind it on them. That's all
Yeah.
you can do on the river. I am kind of a firm believer that the river changes a little bit every year too, just with floods and this and that. I mean, there's always spots with the real hard structure where fish are probably going to set up on particular little current breaks and stuff. But it is tricky. You definitely got to stay on top of them. What I was going to ask you, because I know you've traveled around a lot, like to several states and fish, but like other than like the obvious, probably like in Indiana or something, like is there any other states that like just fish really well for you? Like you've always had just, you know, I don't want to call it random success, but like you just fell right into a groove there.
Yeah, if you kind of, and I've done this because I've looked through my, even, my FLW Tour years, the Invitational years, even the Bass Open the last year, and I'm looking at some of these places, and it's like, okay, I'm finishing in the upper third of the field for these majority of the events, and I'm middle of pack for these, and bottom of third for these. I mean, I'm just all over the place in some of these, but when I really look at it, it comes down to any type of river system that we've ever had. It's where I've had my strengths. So whether we go to the Mississippi River in La Crosse, Wisconsin, or we go to to the East Coast, to like the James River, Potomac River, Chesapeake Bay, anything like that, it's just I feel like it's home to me. And I think like those rivers like out east that have the tidal aspect to it, even though the river here, the Ohio River, isn't tidal, they mess with that water level so much. You almost have to fish it like a tidal river, because you may practice 2 or 3 days leading up to a tournament, and the water's up or the water's down, and as soon as tournament day comes, it's the exact opposite. So those fish obviously aren't where they are, and you've just got to know, like, okay, they've done this to the water. I've got to make these adjustments. And um, I've just always had that like sense of kind of what to do when I get on those river systems. So I would say any of those river systems. I mean, even this Tom Bigby River where I was this week in Mississippi, fish. That was a strength of mine. Now, when I say river systems, then you get to say the Tennessee River system, or
Yeah.
some of those like that. That's a little different scenario where there's a lot of more offshore structure where they're pulling current. You got your bars and things like that. I wouldn't so say that that's so much as my strength, but the shallow, more structure, visual, target oriented
Yep.
rivers, I would say that's a strength. And then I would also say that Florida lakes have been really good to me. Whether it's grass or any type of vegetation, I've just got that feeling of confidence that that looks good. I need to go fish that grass point, just things like that. So obviously those are the things I've been able to take my strengths to, but the the electronics lakes and the lakes where the fish get suspended deep offshore, to the extreme opposite, that's still my major weakness.
Yeah. Let's
Um, how
go
would
ahead.
you how would you say fishing in Ohio compares to fishing outside of Ohio? Because I talked to a lot of guys, and like they say that Ohio is a little stingy. Like it can be a little tough. And I don't know if it's just because of the bodies of water that we're fishing, these little reservoirs, and or the fishing pressure that we get, or just kind of a combination of habitat. I mean, you can go on and on, but like,
Mm-hmm.
how would you compare fishing in Ohio to fishing other lakes that you've fished around the country? Like, is it just kind of hit and miss? It's all the same, just depending on where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, when you're saying like, fishing in Ohio, I mean, when I look at the Ohio options, there's every extreme you can think of. When I think of the easiest fisheries, it's the Lake Erie's or the Mosquito Lakes of, Ohio, and then you think of the toughest is obviously the river, and then the middle ones are, your Indians and things like that, Grands. But when I think of it as a whole, if I kind of exclude Lake Erie, I would say that Ohio, if you can learn to catch fish in Ohio, it makes life a lot easier to catch fish in the other places. I think it's just because we have less options. There's just a lot of pressure at a lot of our lakes. I mean, if you take Indian Lake, for example, I mean, at one point there's a tournament every Saturday morning, every Tuesday evening, tournaments on Sundays. I mean, those fish just never really get a break. So if you can catch fish consistently in little places with that much pressure, when you go to a Lake Okeechobee or you go to any of these places that just spread out a little bit bigger, you're able to just kind of realize like, hey, there's a higher density of fish in these lakes with a little less pressure, and you just seem to do well. Um, if that kind of answers your question, I'm not sure, but I mean, I feel it's hard to compare some of the Ohio lakes to some lakes that are just a lot different geographically,
Sure.
just because those fish set up so much different that when you fish in Ohio, you just don't get to utilize techniques like that, or you're not accustomed to techniques like that. So I find some lakes that other people think are super easy to find fish, and I find it difficult because I've got to find fish in a different way that I'm just totally used to fish being.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like you were
That,
saying, like those deep, clear lakes, like that's just
Yeah.
something we don't even get to experience here. I mean, you can translate a little bit of the offshore stuff on Erie, um, but even that, like going to Smith Mountain Lake or something like that, like that's not Lake Erie. That's not the Ohio reservoirs. Like that's its own kind of thing.
I
Yeah.
I picked up on something just I don't know why it piqued my curiosity, but like I know we've interviewed Whitney and then Destin, I think airs tomorrow morning, which you guys all three have had success in Florida and being all from like the same little geographical area up here. I just wonder if that falls right into what you said. Like if you go down there, it's kind of like if it looks good, it probably has bass on it. Which up here you can fish 10 places that look good and then finally find one that has a bass on it. So it might just be that higher population, better fishery thing. But it's interesting the amount of guys that leave this area and go to Florida and just have great success. I don't know, something blends well there. Like Bill Lowen just won down there this past
Hmm.
spring. So interesting stuff though, for sure.
If you took Lake Erie out of it, like give us a couple lakes in Ohio. I know you mentioned Mosquito, but like what's your preference? Like if you could just spend a weekend at a lake in Ohio, where would you go?
Yeah, probably the two lakes I would say right now that I would choose to go to is Mosquito Lake and Indian Lake. Indian has been on fire the last, couple years. I remember when I first started getting into fishing, in the later, 2006 to 2010, let's say, if you could go to Indian Lake and catch like 8 pounds, you would get in a check. And you catch 10, 11, 12 pounds, you were winning every tournament. And if you look at what that lake has done over the last 10, 15 years, it's improved a lot. Like I just fished a tournament there, I think 2.5 weeks ago, and had 14 and a half pounds and didn't even sniff a check.
Yeah.
So, that's good to see a lake that's gets the pressure that Indian does, that, is able to pump out those kind of weights. So, but a lake like that just fits my strength. It's got grass, it's got pads, it's got docks, riprap. I am just 100% a visual target fisherman. That's just how I grew up. That looks good. You read the water, you catch fish that way. Um, Mosquito Lake to me is another lake like that. You get around that grass and you can, break it down and just have a lot of fun and a lot of success.
Yeah. Indian seems to be turning into a mini mosquito just with all that grass. And it seems like you can catch them in places you never used to catch them there. I saw just, I think today there was a tournament there yesterday. It took over 19 to win. Like that's mosquito numbers, which is great. It's good to see fisheries doing well. And I've noticed like a lot of these tournaments here locally, like there's more seven pluses getting caught. Uh, you know, so something. Not everything's bad, but the lakes that they do take a pounding. That's for darn sure.
Um, I want to go back to mosquito for a second. So for those listening that don't know mosquito or have never been there, you can get over 100 yards offshore and it's still like 6 to 8 feet of water. Uh, most of the lake is just one giant grass flat until you get out towards the middle a little bit. How do you break something like that down? Because I mean, there's very few laydowns that you can get shallow enough to get to. There's hardly any boat docks, and so for me, I have a hard time finding success there just because there's so much
Of the same.
Mm-hmm.
of the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
and, and I don't
Yeah,
know,
like when you get
like when I see videos of Okeechobee, like that's all it is. It's just wide open water with grass and lily pads and so what's your process? Like how do you attack something like that?
Yeah, so it does fish a lot like a Lake Okeechobee, where you have, down there you have miles and miles of things that just look the same. And so when you kind of go to a lake like Mosquito, you can get on just say the east or the west side, and you can go for 2 or 3 miles and it's pretty much just 0 to 10 foot, pretty much gradual banks out the whole way. And you have grass that grows out, thick from the bank out to 4 foot, and then it gets sparse and you have little patches. So, when I go to those lakes, I'm looking for anywhere that there's a change. If I go 100 yards and it's just solid, thick grass to the top, and then all of a sudden the grass makes a turn or the grass has a void, that tells me there's, a different type of bottom down there. Maybe it's a more gravelly bottom that grass isn't going to, root down as well on, or there's a small depression and a depth change there. And it just seems like anytime you can go for a long stretch and it stays the same and then something changes, it just seems like those bass are always at that little crossroads where there's something different. And, when you start going down there and you kind of fish 100 yards and it all looks the same, you don't get any bites. And then all of a sudden you see something different, you start generating bites. You're like, okay, that kind of makes sense to me that those fish are in a little bit farther where that grass makes a little hoop and goes, up into that shallower 2 to 3 foot range, but the grass isn't smothered all the way through right there. Or, you know, you throw something out there and drag it across the bottom, you can feel the clicking and you're like, oh, there's a little road bed there. There's a foundation there. There's something there that's different, and I think the thing I've noticed about a mosquito lake is where you get that real thick grass and then you have those little holes or those voids. Those fish actually bury up right in the edge of that thick stuff. They're actually in it, but they're looking out in that little hole or that little area where it's bare. And so you could visually look down there and you'd be like, there, you don't see one there. Even like if the water was crystal clear and you're like, it's 2 foot of water, there's no fish in that area down there. But if you would flip a bait out there, all of a sudden you'll see a fish run out there and get it. And it's just that fish was staying concealed right in the edge of that cover, just waiting for something to come out in the open, and then you'll get a bite. So then it's like, okay, I kind of, mark a spot like that and I find more. And then, obviously when like the tournament comes, you can kind of stay back and make long casts to those areas. Because a lot of times you find them in practice, you've already kind of like rolled up on it. You're not really expecting it. So those fish are definitely aware that you're there. And then you just need to be as sneaky as possible coming back into those areas. So that's something that's really helped me. And then when I go to like a Lake Okeechobee, I, look for the same thing. If I have a set of reeds that's just thick for 300 yards, and all of a sudden I start to see little clumps of, things that are like size of basketballs around, and there's like little pods of them. It's like perfect little spots for the same thing. A fish can spawn there, a fish can ambush there. And then you just kind of like visually get those things in your mind where you need to cast, and you can almost just call your shots sometimes when you get dialed in. Obviously, when you're not dialed in, it doesn't work. But when you start to read that water, you can literally just go everywhere and just generate bites.
Yeah. What's your favorite way to catch a bass, Kyle? If you go somewhere where they're just eating about anything, like May in Ohio, when you can do about whatever you want. What do you prefer?
Yeah, so a lot of guys know, kind of through my BFL years, that probably one of my favorite baits is a buzz bait. Like, there were years when the river just treated me so well with a buzz bait, and I got to be like, I took it upon myself to try to put a buzz bait where nobody else could put a buzz bait, up in those creeks and under trees and things. And it was just kind of one of those things that the more I started to play around with buzz baits and tinker with them, that I just had like a true love for that, that bite. So 100% probably buzzbait fishing is my favorite, but a second or very close second is I love to punch grass. If you get me in, a thick, matted grass lake, there's nothing better than flipping like an ounce and a half weight through those big mats, especially like in Florida, when any flip down there could be like a 7 or 8 pounder, and
Yeah.
you just see that mat just kind of mush up when one sucked it down. Um, that I mean that's probably my favorite way to catch big fish is mat fishing.
Yeah.
So that's your favorite way. What would you say, like maybe your most productive way would be? Because I think that could be
Well, I
different
would
for guys.
say, yeah. Obviously, I don't get to do a lot of either of those at most times of the year, just because a lot of our season opener tournaments are always early in the year, so the buzzbait's kind of not a deal yet. And then a lot of the lakes we don't have grass mats, so um, probably the thing that has like saved my tail more than anything, and I've probably become more this way in the last 3 or 4 years, that just has saved me, is I've gotten really good with a wacky worm, and I have been able to take that all over the country at all different times of the year and just literally put that thing and just visually know exactly what that thing is doing. How, if I'm in 4 foot of grass, I know like in my mind, I can just sense that worm being like an inch from where the grass is, kind of pull it up, like not get hung in the grass. And I just feel like that thing is like second nature to me right now. And that's really saved, me getting a lot of, 5 fish limit days when I'm having a tough day, when I normally would have weighed in 2 or 3 fish. It's just one of those things that I would say that's probably my strength right now.
No, it's hard to. It's such a simple technique, and it's so hard to beat sometimes. Do you just keep it straight up weightless all the time, or will you break off a little nail weight in there if you're wanting to fish a little faster, a little deeper?
Yeah. So, I would say the majority of the way that I fish it is just I don't really change much up. I mean, I'm throwing a standard, the 5 inch, Cinco. Um, I just throw like a 2/0 hook, straight 2/0 hook. I don't use any type of weed guard. I'll just rip it out of the grass. But every time those fish eat it, it's a good quality hook in the face, and
Yeah.
there's a really good hookup ratio. Um, One thing I learned though is I've had 2 fish in Florida. It would have been 2 years ago. One was in a tackle warehouse invitational, and one was in a Toyota series. I literally hooked up with 2 bass, one in each of those tournaments, and I don't even want to say how big they were, but I never could turn them.
Uh,
One went straight for a grass mat, and like I couldn't even turn it. And the other one went to a dock on the Harris chain, and he got me tied up in there. Like, I did everything I could, and I could not turn that fish. So to answer your question, one thing I've started to do is I've started to take like a 2-aught Nico hook with, weed guard on it, and I will put a small drop shot sinker kind of on the hook.
Okay.
And then I will actually take a bigger wacky worm, like a Gambler Fat Ace, something a little bit bigger, and I will actually put that on a flipping stick. And I've started to flip those in the same places in areas where there might be a 10-pounder.
Yeah.
And even when I'm in around like smaller fish, even 2-3 pounders, but I'm around cover, I've figured out a way to kind of just feather that thing down there with a flipping stick. I can still hit my targets, and the bait still does exactly what I need it to do, as far as the same presentation. So I've started to realize that I can't just use a spinning rod and handle some of those big fish. Like you're in close quarters to too many things that they can get you tied up in, that, both of those fish would have truly changed my tournaments, and I didn't land either one of them. And, that stings, because you
Yeah.
generated a bite that is really hard to get. And, I didn't capture either one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. That hurts. That hurts. I wanted to ask you, which when we have a guest like you that's fished a lot of tournaments and BFLs and things of that nature, do you have any I don't want to say crazy stories, but do you have a real memorable tournament where something crazy may have happened, or you made a great comeback in the last hour, or just I love hearing stories like that, because it's awesome when the stars align and you actually pull a miracle out of your rear end. So, do you have anything like that pops up in your memory, a big fish at the end that helped you win one or anything?
One that comes to mind is I was, fishing both the Buckeye division and the Hoosier division in the BFLs for a few years, mainly trying to qualify for, both the regional tournaments. So I'd have two options of making All-American. And there was one year I was at the Ohio River tournament at Rocky Point, which is like the Tell City pool all the way at the kind of the other end, Louisville end down there. And I had a terrible practice. It's one of those places, most of the times it's tough down there. You get a summer tournament, you get 2 bites, you weigh in 2 fish, you're at least getting good points. Sometimes you even get a check with 2 or 3 fish, and had terrible practice. And I show up to the tournament that day, not really having many expectations. And I end up, going out that day, and my first fish, I pull up to this little edge of grass. They had pulled the water down. I flip a worm out there, and I catch like a 3-pounder. So I'm like, hey, I'm already going to be in the money. So I go down the bank a little farther. I flip in there, and I catch a 5-6.
Oh my
So I'm thinking,
God.
I got like 2 fish for like 8.5 pounds right now.
Top 10,
And it's
easy.
like an hour into the day. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, like, I might already have the tournament won,
Let's go to Waffle House,
So I'm
right?
like,
Let's just put the boat back on the trailer.
yeah. So I go down the bank, and I start throwing a buzzbait down this one bank, and I throw my buzzbait up, and it kind of went over a little tree limb, but I could reel it for a little while. So I reel it up, and it starts to get up to the tree limb, and I decide to drop it back down in the water right after it was I yo-yoed it up off the tree, and a bass comes up and sucks my buzzbait down as I was dangling over the tree. So I catch this fish. It's like a 2-pounder. So now I got 3 fish for 10 something. And I go on to catch 2 more keepers throughout the day, and end up having just under 15 pounds for the river on a place that I didn't even know 15 pounds would exist. So it was I weigh these fish in, and it's I just had that magical day that it's how in the world did I just catch 14 and a half, 15 pounds on the Ohio River in the middle of summer, when it's double the weight that I needed? It was just one of these gifts, a gift from God, that it
Yeah.
was it was meant to be my day that day,
Yeah.
and that's just a day that never kind of leaves my mind, of what, you think you have these days of practice, and then all of a sudden it's you can't always let your practice dictate your mentality of how a tournament's going to go.
Yeah.
And one more quick story is the same thing. I remember I had a FLW tournament once at Grand Lake in Oklahoma, and we had 3 days of practice, and I had 3 bites in 3 days of practice. And I went out and just did something completely different the first day of the tournament. And I had almost 25 pounds just throwing a spinnerbait around. And I was leading the tournament after the first day. And it was just another one of those things, like, it's just like a miracle. Like, but if I had went into that tournament just with no confidence or just going depressed in there, I didn't get any bites. Like, so that has helped me throughout my whole career, not worrying. I mean, you kind of worry like, hey, I'm not on any fish, but you have to just believe that things can change, and they do sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, and like I've seen it firsthand, not on that, level of platform, but like what happened to you on that river tournament, man, like that could happen in the last hour of a tournament. And it has happened for guys. Andy, his story's kind of similar when he won the national championship. He pulled into a pocket kind of, day one was dwindling away and he picked up a spinner bait and just started wrecking them and ended up, going on to just figured a little bite out and went on to win the whole darn thing. So, yeah, dude, I appreciate this. Like, I love hearing these kind of stories. They get me fired up. I'm ready to go fish right now.
Well, and I like to see, because like as tournament guys, I mean, we all get caught in that rut. Like we'll go out, and it could be something as simple as the weather changes the next day, or like you said, like they drew the water down a little bit and it just turned them on for you. Um, but how do you like the grand deal? Like how do you go out and practice and get 3 bites and then have a completely different mindset? Like, hey, you know what? Like I'm just gonna pick up a spinnerbait today. Like what's that thought
yeah.
process like for you?
Well, like when I look back at that tournament, so back in, those days, you basically had 3 days of practice. So I remember like in that tournament, it was like getting right about, getting close to like good pre-spawn time. Like it wasn't spawn time yet, but right leading up to tournament, we had like 80-degree weather. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to start up this big creek arm, this river. So I spent like my whole day up there. And I had 1 bite on a spinnerbait. So I thought, well, that obviously is not, even though it looks right, like I got to try something else. So then second day I tried like, up towards the dam, and I either had, I think, 1 bite or no bites that day. And then the other day of practice, I caught like a 6-pounder on a bluff wall leading into like one of these creeks. So I'm like, I obviously am starting where this quality fish at least came from. So that's when I decided like the practice was just like, even though I only had like 3 bites the whole practice and they were all over the lake, I decided to start where that quality bite came. And I just decided to focus my whole tournament like from that bluff wall area leading into this creek. So I went there, I started right on the bluff wall leading into that creek. I didn't get any bites, and I just no more started down in that little creek arm. It was just 45-degree rock leading in there, and I picked up a spinner bait. Like it was a 3/4 ounce, just painted blade spinner bait. Like it was just something. It was the 1 bite I got on the spinner bait when I was up the river, and it was even like dirtier water up there. But I was just like, I'm just going to slow roll this thing and just try to put something down there. And I got that first bite. It was like, I think it was like a 4-pounder, and then I thought, okay, I'm just going to camp out in here. So it was just that 1 bite in practice that kind of put me in my starting area. And then when I got down there in the tournament, I realized, well, I haven't got any bites on this bluff wall. So maybe these fish that were kind of staged up here, the weather stayed hot because we have an off day for the tour events, and it was hot that day. I thought, well, I'll just see if these fish slid into this creek. And I just happened to just time it perfectly. And I recognized obviously that there were fish in that creek. So I slowed down, just picked everything apart. And it was just like one of those things in Ohio. Like when you're around fish, like you just visually know, like, okay, I caught that one, in a spot where that fish probably was staged up on some gravel and like 4 foot of water. So it was like you're looking for the next cast you can make to that. And I caught a couple that day on that big spinner bait, and then I slowed down and just drug something across some of them areas like with a beaver or something and caught that weight. But then it's like, okay, that happens that day. So then it's like, how do you duplicate that? Because that was like the only little creek that I had. It really wasn't that big. It was just like an arm at the back of a creek. And So like the second day I tried to duplicate that, and obviously like I must have cleaned out most of the fish. I think I only ended up like 3 fish the next day, which it was a tough tournament. It got me to the final day. But looking back, it was like, man, I had an opportunity there. If I could have somehow figured it out, it was one that, a guy could have won if he could have strung that together just with 2 like decent days the rest of the way. Cause it was a tough event, and getting blessed with a day like that, it's just like every bite was a giant. And I remember that day I had just under 25 pounds, but I had like a 3-pounder. And I will never forget, there was a brush pile in the back of this creek, and I run this spinner bait up to it. And you know how like you run a spinner bait up to the brush pile and your line kind of rises up. And there was this little Y in the tree, and it was like another 6-pounder. It literally comes up and tries to eat this spinner bait. Like I can see it. And the fish just gets like rejected from the tree limb. Like it just timed it so imperfect that it just was like not meant to happen. And I was thinking, man, if I could have caught that one, it was going to be like a massive bag of fish. But still to this day, I think that is pretty close to that would have been pretty close to my biggest day of ever having for, a 1-day wait. So it was fun.
That's a good day to have. I know what are y'all fishing this year? I know you're fishing some opens, it looks like. Are you fishing all the BFLs or Buckeye, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so this year, last year I decided to kind of go all in, and I fished all 9 of the opens, and I also fished a handful of like the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals. I did the BFLs, and I just didn't have the greatest of years, and it just wore me out. Like I just felt like I was just leading bad momentum into bad momentum. So this year I kind of decided to take a little bit of a different approach. They split the opens up this year.
Yeah.
So there's like 2 divisions, and I could have done both divisions, but I thought I'm just going to focus on one of the divisions, and really put my time and focus on those, and try to make the top 50. So I've got 2 of those under my belt. I still have 2 of those yet to go. If I happen to make the top 50 in the ranking, then there's a 3 tournament swing in the fall that I would get to fish. So it'd be another 3 weeks of fishing in the fall. So that's kind of like my priority right now for this year is to fish that. But I'm also, in between the schedule allowing me, I think I'm signed up for 3 of the Buckeye BFLs. I think 2 of them that I can't fish are weeks that I'm on the road for the Open. So they kind of unfortunately conflict.
Yeah.
And then I'll do some like local stuff at Indian. I'll do some of the largemouth series at Lake Erie. I like doing some of those. And I'll just kind of, fish a little bit more back home this year. I just feel like the last year or 2, I just feel like no matter how hard I've tried to get into a rhythm, like it's been a struggle.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to just not overdo it, kind of find myself again, put a little more time in some of these local events, and just try to find my groove again. So, my 2 kids are getting into a lot of sports, so being home a lot more, I can see a lot more things, and I like that. So, it's just a good mix this year, kind of what I feel I'm doing. So,
yeah, but it's hard with the kids and all that. We can all relate, and hopefully staying home and being around the family, get that mojo swung back around it, because that was a lot last year for sure. That's hard on a guy. Is the goal to make it to the elites?
yeah, so that was, my goal basically fishing the last multiple years. It was where I was fishing with MLF. It was, hey, I want to make the Bass Pro Tour, which my final year, which was 2 years ago, I was one guy from getting called up. So I think that year I finished 15th, and there was a few guys that left and they called down to 14th. So I missed it by one guy 2 years ago. And I just felt like, well, I had a really good year that year. Like, I'm just going to try something different. So then I was like, I'm going to try the opens, which the goal is obviously to get to the classic with a win or to get to the elite. So my goal either way was to try to get to the top level of either organization. So primarily this year's, with Bass trying to make the elite. So, if I make that top 50, there'll be the other division of 50 guys coming in the fall, and there'd be, I think some of the elite guys that are losing their status also have a chance to kind of fish these. But for 120 guys, let's say they're giving out 10 spots. That to me is pretty good. I mean, it's at least a realistic odds. It's not a 1 in a million. It's something that if you string together 3 good tournaments, like it's a realistic possibility.
Yep.
So if I make it, I would jump up and find a way to make it happen as far as the elites goes and putting it all together. But if it doesn't happen, then I would plan to try to do these opens again the next year and make a classic with a win, or get to that chance to make the elites the following year. So just trying to I guess just take these chances, these chances that I can do it that aren't fully risking me all in until I actually get the chance, I guess, and then we'll put the chips in and give it a go.
Yeah. Well, dude, props to you for trying, man. Because like, you can't make it if you don't try. So I love following along and rooting for you. And I don't, if anyone can, and you can. So like you said, it just takes getting hot, and it'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you before we run out of time, like,
Okay.
just the polarizing topic. Like, how do you feel like you've adapted to the forward-facing, surge of the past couple of years? Is it something you enjoy doing, or I personally go back and forth and feel like I struggle with it a good bit? But where are you at?
Well, growing up in Ohio, like I grew up with basically not even starting with a fish finder. I pretty much jabbed my rod in the bottom and it was like, hey, this is deep enough for me. And I had success fishing that way. So when, the forward facing came out, it was almost like, well, all these guys are learning it and all these guys are doing it, but I didn't buy into it soon enough. And I stayed in my ways. I tried to fish my strengths. And now it's like there's certain tournaments that are really, really hard to compete if my fish aren't up on the bank or my fish are, out in the abyss of the lake. So I am still learning it. And I mean, I feel like I understand it. I'm decent with it, but there's a huge difference when you go to a tournament and you're like decent with this stuff and you're fishing against guys that are experts with this stuff. So um, at this point, like, I use it when I need to, but I know that when I am forced to use it with my skills, like I'm probably not going to win the tournament just for the fact that some of these guys are so good with understanding it. They put the time in with it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I probably should have embraced a little more sooner, but I just was stuck in my stubborn ways thinking like, you know, if everybody's out there chasing fish with live scope, that means nobody's going to be on the bank fishing for these fish anymore. And that just didn't turn out to be the case. It didn't work out that way. So,
Yeah.
if I could pick a tournament, I would 100% pick a tournament like last week's where, some guys can use it, but I can still go try to put my boat in places that a lot of guys won't get it and just visually fish the way that I just grew up fishing. That's my true love.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am at it with it. It definitely is not one of my strengths. So
Yeah, that's
when I don't have to use it, I have a better shot. I feel
that's
like in the
it.
tournaments.
Yeah, we would. You're right there with me. I think we would prefer not to have to depend on it. And I'm kind of right there with you, man. I'm thinking, well, the banks are going to just start getting hotter and hotter, but uh, it hasn't happened. But like, I'm not one of the ones that's like completely anti it at all. I mean, I have it on my boat because you gotta adapt and all that, but uh, just I think everything's going to keep evolving, and there will be in another 5-10 years some other new cutting edge thing that will change the game again, quote unquote. So
Well, I've just enjoyed the process of learning how to use it. Just going to the dam end of the lake and just kind of scanning around just to see what's down there. And so that part of it's been fun for me. Have you ever considered pursuing the MPFL simply because of that, or is that just not on your radar? Not one of your goals?
No, it it really, I mean, it was an option, it was a thought, but at the end of the day, I just was like, you know, it hadn't been around for many years, and looking back, like it seems like they're having a lot of success this year, but it takes a lot of money to make it happen, and it was like I could go through the Bass Opens with a little less of a risk on entry fees, and if I just felt like if I did make the Elite Series, the opportunity for a further advancement as far as like maybe a full-time career maybe was a more of a realistic opportunity. But it looks like now like the MPFL is gaining a lot of traction, so um, they're getting good turnout, so it's like it would almost be nice to do like both of them if a guy could swing it, because like I just kind of followed a little bit of their couple tournaments this year, and it's like if you look at who's winning those tournaments, it's guys that were like some of the best shallow water guys that ever played the game are starting to kind of show that they're at the top of that, and it's just kind of neat to see the difference in how all the different organizations are structured and like how the different weights are in the tournaments, like, and who's fishing them. Like it's kind of come down to like you could kind of pick what fits you best.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had a bunch of friends that have fished that and they actually have enjoyed it. And there was one of the years I looked into it and was thinking about doing it. I think it was one of the years that I did the invitationals, and I was seeing if somehow I could like fish that and the MPFL. And if I remember right, like there was like some conflicts and it couldn't, you couldn't do them both without a conflict. So I didn't end up doing it, but I had buddies that did it.
Yeah.
Um, if you don't mind me asking, like, what do you do professionally outside of fishing?
Yeah, so that's a good question because it's hard. It's hard to travel and do all that. So I was a school teacher for 11 years. I taught middle school special ed. When I started fishing the tour in 2016, I, had luckily talked with the school, and, you know, like within the school year, some of our tournaments started before the school year obviously was out. So like there was like 2 or 3 years that I like took dock pay. They were allowing me to take dock pay, but I could plan my lessons ahead, catch back up when I came back. So there was like 2 or 3, 4 years I did that, while I was teaching. But then it got to the point, it was just hard. It was hard on me catching up. It was hard on the kids with having change, in the classroom. So at that point, I decided to kind of go back into construction, which is, what my family had basically grown up doing. So there was a guy that pretty much, and I still work for him to this day, will basically just let me work when I'm home, fish when I'm on the road, and it's like it kind of works out really well because I'm not taking a lot of stress with me on the road. Like I just kind of, when I come back into town, I can show up and, work 40 weeks a year or whatever. But when I need to go, I don't have the stress with me of, taking work with me and, or having people upset that I'm not there. Just, it's kind of been a good fit. So,
Great
if I would
fit.
get the chance to step it back up, I could, still keep that. And that's the hardest thing in this whole game is you got to find that mix. Some of the guys are good enough to have the sponsorships and the fishing talent to just do that as a full-time career. But there's so many guys that fall in the same boat as me that if you truly just took the step to be a full-time fisherman and you have a bad year or two, like you are completely out of the game because it will eat you up so fast that you just can't. The bills don't stop coming at home. You have living expenses at home, and then you add the whole life of the tournament travels and the costs and all that. So it's been like a big like balance, and I've had to really like be smart about like I guess how I have kind of put it all together to make it all work. You know, that's like a full-time job. So
Yeah, you want something bad enough, you just figure it out, and I can appreciate the flexibility side of it. I've been fortunate in the same way, and you mentioned the guys that have the big sponsors, and that can be the deal, dude. You're talking about a very small percentage of professional anglers. Like, mass majority of them, have a business that's supporting them, or something else, a job, just like you. But it's not all as glamorous as you see on TV. Sometimes there's a lot of grinding behind the scenes just to get to the boat ramp, isn't there?
yeah. I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, in most of these, I mean, every year that I've done this, like once you commit to a tournament or an organization and the tournaments, like you're already paying like so much money, so many thousands of dollars before you even make a cast, because you put deposits down, commitments down, you're getting all your equipment and tackle. I mean, so like it's not one of those things where it's like I'm good enough I can just go out there and make a check. I mean, you have to have backing from the beginning before, as a cushion before you even can expect to get a check back. So it's a grind. Like you constantly have to think about, okay, if I put this money in here, what's the possibility of getting any of it back? Or, you're just like, if I go all in this year, can I fish any next year? Like it's one of those things. And I mean, at the root of all this is your family. So your family comes first. And, I'm never gonna take it to the point that it puts my family in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Because then you get to the point where it doesn't become even fun, because it has to be fun at the end of the day. If you're out there trying to make a house payment or trying to make a truck payment or feed your family on making a cast, like, and I'm sure that there's many guys trying to do that. Like, I just don't, I'm just at the point in my life, like, I just don't want that. Like, I don't want to put myself or my family in a position like that. So, I want to run this as long as I can run it, and I'm not a quitter. Like I give it all I have every time and everything that I do. But if it ever gets to that point, like I'm just gonna be humble and say like it's time to back away for a little while. I'll fish locally. I'll do whatever it takes to make my family come first.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, I fish on the club level typically, um, and when like the few tournaments that I've won, I mean, you make 400 or 500 bucks, and that covers all the baits you bought for that weekend, your gas, your travel, your entry fee, and you're basically just
Right.
breaking even. Um, and so, like, if you do well, uh, particularly in my club, if you do well throughout the season, you might profit a little bit, but for the most part, you're just breaking even so you can keep fishing. Uh, as you step up different levels, because you've had statistically um, success in your career on the financial side, but is that deceiving? Like, are you basically just like breaking even and covering your costs to keep doing it, or is it actually pretty lucrative?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a grind. I mean, there's there's many years. Like, I mean, if you look at my career stats with MLF or whatever, like it's going to show a couple $100,000 here and there, and that's a ton of money. But when you break that down, per season, a lot of those entry fees in a season, I would probably spend $30,000 or $40,000 in an entry fee for some of those years that I, fished, and you times that by say 10 years of fishing the national level. So right there's three or $400,000
You broke
that
even.
is just an entry fee alone. So yes, I've had, fortunate some sponsorships and things like that. But when you add, just like you were saying, like at your club level, like you're buying tackle, you're doing this, well, multiply that times like 15 that I'm thinking, because every lake that I'm going to that I've never been to, I'm thinking of what baits might be the deal there. So it's like I'm spending money just on things, like that may be in my mind, things that I should possess for that term, or I'm stocking up on certain things. So, at the end of the year, it's like you have like this massive stockpile of tackle that you've just like accumulated that,
Right.
um, that just sits there, and it was money that you spent with the intent, like you're going to do everything that you possibly can in these tournaments to be successful. So whether that was, buying these baits or buying these map chip cards that you think maybe have better contours on them, or just so many different things, like you're just always trying to do whatever you can to try to like give yourself the best chance. So, at the end of the year, you look at all those numbers and it's like really, really hard to show a profit. Like the years, if any, that I've truly shown a actual profit from some of the fishing was like probably some of the years where I had like the Angler of the Year titles and the BFLs, and made some of the All-Americans, because like, some of those won a few, $3, $4, $5,000 in some of the BFLs, but then you had like, boat contingency money that you would get, or top 10 money from them, or you'd like, I remember there were like sunglass, like certain like contingencies you get in. So you could like win a BFL and you would make like $7, $8, $9, $10,000 off of like a $300 entry fee. So like looking back, it was like, that those were the years where I actually probably profited the most, and I was probably risking the least. So, I mean, I know that sounds terrible, but like, that's just the truth of it, but, a lot of these circuits, it's just like, if you can make the championship at the end of the year, like the one year, and I don't even know if there was a lot of people that know this story, but like, it still gives me nightmares at night. Like the one year I had a really good season, and I was at the last tournament. I had made a check like in 4 out of the 6 tournaments, and I was actually going to like probably have some good money carrying over to the next year. And I was at Lake Champlain, and I caught this fish on the second day of tournament, and I knew that tournament was going to qualify me for the Forced Wood Cup, which was like automatic $10,000 just to show up. And if you did better, it was more. And that tournament alone, like I knew, like I just caught this 4-pound smallmouth. Like I got a big bag of fish. I'm going to like get a $10,000 check here. So, I forgot to call my 6th fish that day after I caught that fish at the end of the day.
Oh,
I go in, I weigh my fish in the tournament. My big fish that I just caught, I didn't have a tag on it. I just threw it in there, and I didn't even weigh in the biggest fish that I, should have called out a small one. So I weigh in these fish. I go to take my boat out, and there's a fish still in my live well. So I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I called tournament director, and I ended up getting a 2-pound penalty for not calling. And I missed the FLW Tour, the Forest Wood Cup, by like one place, and I didn't get a check in that tournament. So it was like a $20,000 mistake. And that would have been the year of any that I was like kind of setting myself up to like be okay the next year. Like it was almost enough to pay for my entry fees, and I just like made the stupidest rookie mistake ever. Like it's still like people still make fun of me. Like if I, hey, do you have 5 fish in your live well? Like it still gives me nightmares that
Brutal.
like I forget to take one out of my live well.
Yeah.
So there was a year that I could have made a really good profit, and yeah, I kind of made a stupid mistake, and I just got caught up in the moment. I caught this fish, and I was like, I finally did it. It's like the 3rd or 4th year fishing the tour. I hadn't made a championship yet, and the last tournament come right down to it, and I just got caught up in the moment. And that's what you can't do in this. You have to stay lightning focused the whole time, and you can't have mental hiccups like that, because that's what'll happen. So
Yeah. Man, that stings. I hated hearing that story. That stings
yeah,
bad.
well,
Well,
it's happened to other people too,
it
but I just,
has. You see it a
looking
lot.
back, it's like, yeah, but I mean, looking back, I still can't believe, like, as I dug those fish out of live well, I'm at Lake Champlain, the water's clear. How do I not see that? Like, if I recognized that fish in the live well right then, I would at least got to weigh in my big fish, and I honestly think I still would have got a check, and I still would have made the championship, swapping out the small fish for the big fish and taking the 2-pound penalty. So it's just like, what was the reason that like the fish just didn't jump, or like the tail hit me when I'm in there digging around? Like I just still to this day, it just ponders my mind, why it was meant to be. Maybe it was just not my time, and I was, supposed to have that happen to me for a reason, and
That's the
that's
only
just God's
way.
plan
Yeah,
sometime,
that's the only way you can, man. Maybe there's a bigger purpose for that not happening. So,
Yeah. So we live, we learn.
right.
right. I feel like because you've kind of been at the highest level, you kind of know what making the elites or making the Bass Pro Tour is about, the risk that you take, the sacrifices. But what would you tell guys that's their dream, that really don't know what they're getting into? Because we've heard guys that have qualified for the elites and turned it down just because life didn't work out for them that way, and they just knew that that wasn't something that they could pursue. So what would you tell guys that want to pursue that?
Yeah, I mean it's a unique opportunity. It's something that it's really, really awesome. If I would get that chance, like it would be like a dream bucket list thing to not only get to do it, but like to actually try to like succeed with it and continue on with it. But um, when you look at it, like the numbers are kind of just against you. Like you have to have everything in order, it seems like, for you to have things to fall into place. So a lot of these, like, there's a lot of really, really good college anglers that are coming out, and they are able to somehow make this transition and make it happen. But for every success story that is out there, there's a lot of guys that are, not getting that break, or they're taking these gambles that it's you just kind of just don't end up hearing of these people for years and years. And it's obviously because it's very financially, you know, um, hard to continue on if you have some bad years. So my advice to anybody like that really wants to do this is, is to try to give yourself experience across all these different lakes in the country through whatever avenues that you can, which a lot of these college anglers are getting kind of that opportunity to sample the different regions of fish, because that was my biggest learning experience. Like I mentioned in the beginning was, if I can catch fish in Ohio, I can catch fish anywhere, is what I thought. But when you get to some of these other, lakes where there's veteran fishermen that have fished this lake or this type of lake for years, like it is so hard to just roll in there and like compete with them or beat them. So, um, if you're going to be able to qualify and make the elites, like you not only have to like make it, but you got to be able to make it and go out there and like succeed. I think you get like a 2 year running average if you're not within the top something, like you have like within 2 years, like you have to like be doing really good, or else you're not going to keep your status. So I guess my advice to those kids or those guys out there is like, just make sure your skills are very well rounded, throughout the different lakes in the country, because they're going to fish 9, 10 events in a year, and you're bound to see every corner of, these regions, and every extreme of fishing as far as weather and types of conditions. And then you got to get your life right. Like you've got to have a family that supports you and is behind you. You've got to have either some kind of financial backing that's behind you. You got to have the sponsor set up behind you, because like this year for me, if I end up making these three in the fall and I make the top 10, that's going to be a tournament in November. I have to then turn around in November and pay all my deposits for the elite the next year. So it's not like there's a 1 year window. Hey, I'm going to go out and find these sponsors and find all this backing. Like it's literally like you got to know up front, like if I make this, like I've got to take this risk on, or I've got to be able to have these options to make it happen, because like it's literally like a very small window of time to like commit and say like, yeah, I'm fishing it. So you just got to have it all in order. You got to have your mind right. Like there's so many aspects to it. Like you got to be at peace with yourself, and you just got to have your mind in the right place. And if it's not, like you just will not fish to your potential. That's just what it comes down to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, let's just talk briefly on sponsors, and particularly yours, and the role that they've had. Give you an opportunity, maybe just tell us maybe who they are and who's made the most impact for you, and really what that means to you.
Yeah, so it's been something that like I've tried to really build my brand, and continue to improve with my sponsorships, but it's really hard. Like it's a hard battle. So I am very thankful for every single sponsor that has helped me along the way, and has been part of my journey, or still is part of my journey, because even if it's a little here and a little there, like I was mentioning, like every little bit helps. Every little bit helps you get by, whether it's from financial support or some kind of equipment or tackle or just anything of any regard of support. Like it truly, especially in years when you're not having your greatest years, like it just helps you get by to the next year. So um, probably my biggest supporter that is really like, I would say really stepped up and just been a core help of mine the last, 4, 5, 6 years has been Freedom Outdoors. They have really, helped put me in equipment that has always performed at the top level. I haven't had to worry about like, is my boat going to work this week or is it not going to work? And they just have like we were saying, you got to have all those things in line and you got to have your mind right. So like when I go turn the key at a tournament, like I can't have things in my mind that's saying like, I hope my boat can make this 40-mile run. I hope that this works or that works. Like, so like that help from, Freedom gives me that peace of mind that everything's where it needs to be. Like I can go wherever I need to go in the lake. I can do whatever I need to do. And if something I need, like they're going to help me out with that. So that I got to say a huge shout out to them. Um, and then I've got a ton of, local companies that have kind of been with me that, I use their products in some way, shape, or form, or they just, have been a big help. So, Blue Spruce Whitetails, they, make premium deer scents. I'm a big deer hunter, so I've used their products, but, they've been a big help for years. Metalink Technologies is an internet provider in my area, and they've just been a big supporter, for the last 4 or 5 years. Um, HCF Management, they run a bunch of nursing homes in my area, but they've been a contributor. There's just so many different. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but just those little relationships that continue to help me make it another year, put me in something that is going to give me the top notch stuff that I need. Like it makes a difference.
Well, and I'm glad you used the word relationship because um, as much as they're supporting you, I mean, it really is a relationship and a partnership there that I think a lot of guys take for granted when they're seeking kind of to make the jumps to the different levels and seek out those connections. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's got to be a win-win. That's the thing that I've learned, like with all my relationships. Like it can't be like a one-way sided thing. It's got to be a win for them and, win for you. And when you can find those relationships where the balance is right, like a lot of those relationships will, last for a long time, and they turn out to be a lot of, good relationships in the past. I've had, I worked with Paragon truck bed covers for years, and, they were another big one that supported me. IOSO products. I mean, straight up mounts. There's so many I can, like I said, I can go on and on. And some of these, I wouldn't even say are like sponsors of mine to this day, but I still have those relationships. Like I might not show them my shirt, but I still have those contacts and those relationships that, if I needed something, well, I still have those relationships and good relationships with them that they would help me out in some way, shape, or form, and that means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like Aaron said, the relationship, good sponsorships, or it's a long game, and it takes time to like get to the tier of like real financial help. I mean, a lot of people get it, but a lot of people don't. The younger kids, they don't get it quite as much, but it's just a growing process. But yeah, so uh, regardless, man, we greatly appreciate you coming on. You're a super humble dude, and you're a great angler, and we look forward to following along with you this year, and wish you the best of success and safety.
Well, I appreciate that, and it was good talking with you, Jesse and Aaron. And um, I'm going to keep trying to make Ohio proud, and I'll keep her going as long as I can, and hopefully one day I'll get there. But it's been fun, and it's just been a good part of you know just an experience in life. Whether I make it to the top or not, I've got to see things and do things that I probably just don't deserve everything that I've been able to see, and I'm just thankful that I've got to do what I've been able to do so far. It's been fun.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you sharing some of it with us, and we love living it through guys like you. So maybe we can have you back on and do a little season recap or something with you in the fall. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, right before you get ready to fish those last 3 in November, huh?
Right before he's got to pay for the elites.
Right.
All right. Well, we got a plan, man. So
Yeah.
I'll talk to you guys in a few months.
All right.
All right. Hey, well, thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks for listening, everybody. This episode was brought to you by the Great Lakes Fishing Expo. Remember, please leave us a comment, a subscribe, any kind of interaction on a major podcast platform will help us grow. We're going to continue to bring these to you every week, and we want to bring you topics that you want to hear. So we want the feedback, and we want to make them better for you. And we'll talk to you next week.